All right, everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going deep, really deep, into something you might not have thought too much about before.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's on the docket today?
It's all about elections, but not the usual stuff. We're talking about disinformation, the kind that comes straight from the campaigns themselves.
That's interesting. We hear so much about foreign interference.
Exactly, and that's a real issue, don't get me wrong. But the
Mm.
source material for this deep dive, it's based on some arguments from Norbert Bob Gastisha, and he's gotten some help from ChatGPT, apparently.
Oh, using AI to help explore this topic? That's smart.
Yeah, well, Gastisha says this campaign disinformation, it can be even more impactful than stuff coming from outside sources.
I can see why that might be. You tend to trust sources you already agree with.
That's one of the big points, yeah. So the question is, how do they do it, spread this disinformation, and why is it so effective?
Ready to dive in? Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Okay, so one thing Gastisha talks about is this idea of selective information. Think about those political ads, right? The ones that make a candidate look amazing on one specific topic.
Oh, yeah, you see those all the time, but they always seem to leave some stuff out, don't they?
Exactly. It's like they're giving you a very carefully chosen piece of the story, hoping you won't look any further.
And, we all have that tendency to simplify complex things. It's just easier to process information that way.
Right. Who has time to dig into every single detail? So we fall for these simple narratives, even if they're not the whole truth.
And that's where campaigns can really take advantage. They know how to play on our need for easy answers.
Oh, absolutely. And then you've got those negative ads, the ones that just attacks the other candidate.
Oh man, those are everywhere during election season.
They're everywhere, and they're super effective, even if they're based on misleading information.
Well, there's a reason for that, right? It's our negativity bias. We just tend to remember negative stuff more easily.
I see what you mean. Like, even if you find out later that the ad was wrong, that first negative impression might stick with you.
Exactly. It can be really tough to shake that initial feeling, even when you know you've been misled.
It's kind of scary how powerful that can be.
It is, and it's something campaigns know how to exploit.
So where does social media fit into all of this? I feel like it just makes this whole disinformation problem even worse.
It definitely does. Ghostisha actually talks a lot about how social media algorithms, the ones that decide what you see in your feed, they can actually amplify the spread of misinformation.
It's like they know exactly what will get you riled up.
Right. And it makes sense from their perspective. They want to keep you engaged, keep you scrolling, and emotionally charged content does exactly that.
So even if the information is totally inaccurate or biased, as long as it gets people talking or arguing or sharing, the algorithms are happy.
Basically, yeah. And that leads to these echo chambers where you only see information that confirms your existing beliefs. You never get exposed to different perspectives.
Oh, I've totally seen that happen. It's like everyone's just stuck in their own little bubbles.
And campaigns know how to use those bubbles to their advantage. They target their messages to specific audiences, reinforcing those existing beliefs, even if they're based on falsehoods.
So it's not just the platforms themselves, but the campaigns are actively using them to spread their message, whatever that message might be.
Exactly. And it creates this really complicated ecosystem of information where it's hard to know what's true and what's not.
So we've talked about a lot of different tactics, but let's get back to that original question. Why is this type of disinformation, the kind spread by the campaigns themselves, potentially even more effective than foreign interference?
So Gastisha gives three main reasons for that. First, like we were saying earlier, it's about trust. We already tend to trust the sources, the candidates or parties that we support.
So we're more likely to believe what they're saying, even if we should be questioning it.
Right. And that leads into the second reason, confirmation bias. We naturally seek out information that confirms what we already believe, and we tend to dismiss information that challenges those beliefs.
So even if we see something that contradicts our favorite candidate's message, we're more likely to just ignore it.
Pretty much. And the third reason, it gets really tricky here. It's about how this campaign-driven disinformation blurs the lines between legitimate political messaging and straight-up manipulation.
Like, how do you even tell the difference anymore?
It's tough, right? Especially when you factor in all those emotional appeals and our own biases. It's a recipe for confusion, for sure.
It feels like we're being bombarded from all sides. So what are we supposed to do about it? How can voters protect themselves?
Well, first of all, just being aware of all this, of these tactics, is a huge step. The more you know about how you're being targeted, the better equipped you are to defend against it.
So it's about being more conscious of our own biases,
Yep.
right?
Exactly. And it's also about being really critical of the information we encounter, even if it comes from sources we trust. Don't just take things at face value.
So fact check, verify, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And also, try to seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just stay in your own echo chamber. Read news from sources you don't normally agree with. Listen to people who have different opinions than your own.
It's tough to do, but it's so important to get the full picture.
It really is. The more informed we are, the better choices we can make as voters.
So to sum it all up, the big takeaway here is that while we should definitely be worried about foreign interference in elections, we can't forget about the disinformation coming from the campaigns themselves.
Right. It's often more subtle, more targeted, and because of those trust and bias factors we talked about, it can be incredibly persuasive.
So as we head into this election season, everyone listening, let's make a promise to ourselves to be more critical, more informed, and more discerning consumers of information. Don't just believe everything you see and hear. Do your own research, challenge your own assumptions, and most importantly, think for yourself.
That's the best way to fight back against disinformation and ensure that our elections are decided based on facts, not manipulation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.